What are the best ab exercises you can do for more prominent abs? Well, in this video, I'm gonna be ranking 11 of the most popular ab exercises on a tier list from S for should definitely try, all the way down to D for definitely do not do. And then at the end, I'm gonna crown one exercise as the best ab exercise for hypertrophy, as well as one exercise as the worst. Now, the criteria I'm gonna be using for this video is gonna be on screen right now, but ultimately remember that this is my opinion. Let's get straight into it. Now, before we jump into the first exercise, we have to first understand the function of the abs, specifically the function of the rectus abdominis, which is the visible six-pack muscle we all know to love. Now, the function of the rectus abdominis is spinal flexion, meaning we can shorten or contract the abs by hunching over forward, curving our spine like a C, as well as lengthen or stretch our abs by leaning back and extending our spine into like a open parenthesis. Now that we understand that, we can get on to the first exercise, starting with the body weight ab exercises. Let's go to the studio room. Now, the first exercise is gonna be the lying ab crunch or sit up. Pretty much the same thing. Now, this exercise is gonna be a lengthened focus ab exercise because we're lying on the ground. But in terms of getting a good stretch on the abs, because we're not allowing our back to go further into extension unless we arch our spine, we're not getting the best range of motion that we can for an ab exercise. Also, unless you have someone or something to hold your feet down, it's not gonna be the most stable ab exercise on the list. But on the plus side, progression is gonna be relatively simple. You just add weight on your hands. And this exercise should be relatively pain-free for most individuals. So this is a very middle of the road exercise. I'll give it a B tier. Now, the second body weight ab exercise on the list is gonna be the V-up. Now, it's similar to a body weight ab crunch, but instead of only working on spinal flexion from the upper body, we're also getting a contraction on our lower abs from below. Now, this is also gonna be a lengthened focus ab exercise, as you're gonna find a lot of these body weight lying on the floor ab exercises are, but compared to the ab crunch with no one holding your feet, this is arguably more stable because the center of mass is gonna be more balanced in the center of your body. Now, progression on this exercise is very similar to the ab crunch. It's pretty easy, but just be mindful that reasonably, you're pretty much only gonna be able to increase weight from the upper half, unless you use something like ankle weights or something, but I know most people just aren't gonna have access to that. But all in all, I think this exercise involves the entire rectus abdominis better than the last exercise, so this is definitely gonna be an A tier. Now, the third bodyweight exercise you might be thinking about is Russian twists. Now, this exercise is unique from the last two because instead of working in the sagittal plane where we're just hunching forward like this, we're actually working more in the transverse plane, moving side to side. The thing is, if you're trying to really focus on training the abs specifically, you're actually better off working in the sagittal plane. Something like a Russian twist or a pocket picker where you're working in this transverse plane is actually gonna be more involving the oblique muscles. Now, in terms of progression, this exercise is pretty much like all the rest. It's pretty easy to just add weight and add resistance by just holding weight in your hands. It should be relatively pain-free as well. And while technically, yes, your rectus abdominis is still going to be involved in this exercise, pretty much just holding isometric contraction, which is not necessarily ideal for hypertrophy, specifically for the abs. So if I'm ranking this exercise specifically for the abs, this will have to be a D tier. Now, the fourth exercise on the list is the all too popular humble plank. Now, unlike the other exercises, this is gonna be purely an isometric exercise, meaning all you're doing is holding a contraction on your rectus abdominis without any range of motion, meaning you're not moving your spine or anything at all. In general, exercises that take the muscle through a stretch as well as a contraction that have actual range of motion are superior for hypertrophy compared to isometric exercises like the plank. And while technically, yes, you're gonna be in a somewhat more lengthened to mid-range focused position, this exercise just really isn't ideal if your goal is to build muscle. Now, in terms of progression, it is admittedly relatively easy if you have another person with you. You can just like, drop more weight on your back, or you can do more of like a hard mode plank where you kind of go like this. But if you think about limiting factors in this exercise, some people might actually fatigue in their upper body before their abs actually get tired. So overall, I'm gonna rank this exercise a D tier. Now, the fifth exercise is the lying leg raise. It's pretty much the bottom half of a V-up. Now, this is also gonna be a lengthened focus exercise since we're lying on our back. Progression is gonna be more hard and tricky to do unless you have like ankle weights or something, or if you wanna risk it and put some dumbbells between your legs, but I don't recommend that. Now, if you're newer and you find the V-up to be too hard, this could be a good alternative. And because of that, you can make it slightly more stable than a V-up in my opinion. And it's generally a pain-free exercise. So I think because I can see this exercise as a regression to the V-up, I will also give this an A tier ranking. I'm moving out of the studio onto the first exercise with equipment. First one's gonna be a hanging leg raise / knee tuck. Now, unlike the body weight exercise where you're lying on the floor, this is gonna be a more short and focused ab exercise. And it's gonna be quite hard for a lot of people. Now, the biggest problem I see in this exercise is that your grip will likely be a limiting factor on the movement, meaning you're more likely to have your grip give out before your abs are actually tired. And because you're just kind of having your body suspended in midair, it's not gonna be the most stable exercise. Applying progressive overload through increased resistance is also gonna be hard in this exercise, but generally this is probably not gonna be much of a problem for most individuals since this is overall a more difficult exercise to execute. If the regular straight-legged hang leg raise is too difficult, I recommend doing a knee tuck instead as a regression and then eventually working up to the full leg raise. What that says, this exercise definitely looks cool. However, that really isn't a criteria in my ranking. This is gonna get a solid B tier. Now, exercise number 7 is gonna be the cousin to the hang leg raise, and that is a captain's chair leg raise / knee tuck. Now, the resistance profile for this exercise is gonna be quite similar to the hang leg raise where it's gonna be a pretty short and focused exercise. However, the range of motion isn't actually gonna be as good as you're gonna find it much harder to get really past parallel to the ground when you're doing this exercise. And with that said, this exercise has one really good advantage. That is extremely stable. It's much more stable than the hang leg raise. In fact, it takes the grip out of the movement since you're gonna be suspended at your elbows. Now there's gonna be limitations with progression just like on the hang leg raise, and that is gonna be slightly more problematic on this exercise because most people are gonna find this exercise to be quite easier than a hang leg raise. But with that said, it's undeniable that this exercise is one of the most stable ab exercises you can do. This is gonna be a solid A tier. All right, people, exercise number 8 is gonna be the decline ab crunch. This is essentially an ab crunch on a decline bench such as this, and what this allows us to do is basically have a slightly more shortened to mid-range focused ab crunch, but be able to get a better range of motion in the shortened position, since we're gonna be dangling upside down. Now, I think the biggest pro to this exercise is it's gonna be a very stable variation of an ab crunch, since every single machine is gonna have this leg anchor that's gonna anchor you down as you do the ab crunch, so no longer do you need to really worry about your feet coming in the air. Now, progression is gonna be possible with this exercise by holding weight, but your chest, triceps, and front delts may be a limiting factor on this movement if you're gonna add weight. But all in all, this is one of the best exercises you can do for your abs, in my humble opinion, because of the stability, as well as the really good range of motion. So this is gonna get an S tier. All right, so we had to go to an entirely new gym for the 9th exercise, and that is the ab wheel roller. Now, this exercise is gonna be not only length and focus, but it's also gonna really emphasize the eccentric part of the exercise, since the hardest part is really gonna be on your way back down and holding this lengthened position and coming up. So some people might consider this exercise to be an isometric exercise, but you have to understand that on the way up, you're actually gonna be contracting your abs in order to get yourself back in the starting position. In terms of stability, balance is generally gonna be a pretty big problem on this exercise, so it's not the most stable. Progression is also gonna be hard because, well, it's a bodyweight exercise. However, because of the difficulty of this exercise, you probably don't need to actually increase resistance at all. So like most ab exercises, this is gonna be relatively pain-free, so there's really no issues there. This is gonna get a solid B tier. Let's get back to the old gym because I feel kind of out of place here. So the 10th exercise is gonna be a machine ab crunch. Now, there's a lot of different variations of machine ab crunches, but in general, I find that one thing is usually true with all of these. If you're shorter, you're gonna have a difficult time doing this exercise and getting a good range of motion. So in this case, in terms of resistance profile, it's gonna be more short and focused where the hardest part is gonna be down here, but I've seen machines that are more length and focused too. But I feel like a lot of these machines in the US are just not made for a 5'6" individual. So if you're taller, then obviously it doesn't really matter. But if you're on the shorter side, you're gonna find that your range of motion is gonna be limited as, look, there's no resistance here. And I can always lower the seat, but if I lower the seat too much, I can't really contract all that well either. So ultimately, it's gonna be a give and take when it comes to this exercise. From a progression standpoint, it's obviously really good because it uses a trusty little cable stack, which you can always manipulate the resistance profile. But overall, like most machines do, this is a really stable exercise. You don't really have to worry about balance or anything like that. This is gonna be a strong A tier for most individuals. The last exercise on this list is gonna be a cable weighted ab crunch. Now, compared to the machine, of course, this exercise isn't gonna be as stable, but I think it is stable enough if you just know that you shouldn't be moving your hips around. Now, with that said, the main advantage of this exercise is the fact that we can get a really good range of motion on this exercise since we can actually let our spine go into extension like this. Meaning, this is probably gonna be the most lengthened focused ab exercise you can technically do. With that in mind, if you want the resistance profile to also be lengthened focused, you just need to take a step back and have your body be a little bit more horizontal to the ground like this. In this case, this is gonna be the hardest part of the movement. Compared to if we're closer up, then of course, it's gonna be a little bit more short and focused. Now, in my opinion, when you use a rope, your grip can be a little bit of a limiting factor, so I personally recommend using something like a straight bar like this. On top of that, since of course we're using cables, progressive overload is gonna be really easy since you just add weight. With that said, the only gripe I can name on this exercise is the fact that a lot of people tend to do it wrong. They tend to move their hips around when they're doing a weighted ab crunch, kind of something like this. So if you just understand and know that, okay, I'm just gonna leave my hips here and all I'm gonna focus on is bending down my spine like this, then you should be good. And as you can probably tell by how I'm talking on this exercise, this is gonna be an S tier exercise. All right, so now that we got through all 11 exercises, let's crown the worst exercise as well as the best one. Now, before I get into it, comment down below in your opinion what the best and worst exercise is. Now, with that said, moment of truth, the worst exercise on this list has to go down to the Russian twist. Now, this is specifically talking purely for the abs. Simple fact is the Russian twist or pocket picker is more of an oblique exercise, and your abs is only gonna be playing an isometric role where you just hold the contraction. Therefore, you're not really training your abs, and admittedly, a close second to this exercise would be the plank. If we're talking about overall core here, I think the plank is probably a worse exercise since it's purely an isometric contraction. You're just holding yourself there. You're not even getting a range of motion for the obliques either. Moment of truth for the best ab exercise for hypertrophy. Again, if you haven't commented, comment down below what you think right now. It's gonna be none other than the cable weighted ab crunch. Now, you probably saw this coming, but the fact that you not only have a stable exercise, an exercise you can progressive overload with and easily add weight, but you also are able to manipulate the resistance profile by making the exercise more lengthened focus, and you can get a stretch on your abs and actually go into extension. A lot of people think about contracting their abs, but they don't think about getting a good stretch on their abs. Well, with the cable weighted ab crunch, you can do all of that in a safe manner as well. With that said, that was my ranking of the 11 most popular ab exercises for more prominent abs. Now, I know people say abs remain in the kitchen, but no, they're made in the gym and revealed in the kitchen. If you do train your abs, more likely your abs are gonna be more prominent, they're gonna stick out, and you're gonna be able to see it at a higher body fat percentage. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Leave a like if you wanna support my page. It will be much appreciated. Literally hit it right now. Easiest way to support my page without even paying a thing. Hit subscribe if you wanna level up your physique, and hit the bell notification to get these videos right as I post them. Don't waste your time in the gym. Maybe you're driving to the gym about to train abs right now, but you get a notification that, oh, Tyler made a best ranking ab exercise video, and then you're not gonna waste your time there. So that said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.